Today we're making potato samosas, but before that, let's talk about spices. If you're serious about cooking, have storage space, and a means to grind spices, I recommend buying them whole. They're generally cheaper than buying spice mixes and ground spices. They also have a much longer shelf life. If you've ever had freshly cracked black pepper, you've probably noticed a strong difference between its flavor and aroma when compared to ground pepper. Ground spices eventually lose their strength and flavor because many of those flavor and aroma molecules are volatile and will dissipate into the air with enough time. Whole spices retain their flavor because you grind them as you need to use them. They are also more versatile than spice mixes, as there's a lot of overlap when it comes to spices used in various cuisines, and buying individual spices allows you options if you like to cook a bit of everything. I have nothing against spice mixes or ground spices. I actually use both because they're convenient, but they are less cost effective and I'm always down to save a few dollars. When I was researching for this video, I found that garam masala recipes either call strictly for whole spices or ground spices. I, and some of you, might have a mix of whole and ground spices, so I've made this handy table to convert between whole and ground spices. I'll leave it up so you can screenshot it for later. Potato samosas, as delicious as they are actually pretty simple. I did not do any specific shopping for this recipe, and you don't have to either. The more specialty ingredients are going to be the spices used in the garam masala, but you can get an acceptable garam masala with just the 3 C's: cumin, coriander, and cardamom. Don't stress yourself out with buying every single spice that could possibly go into a garam masala. If you've got the 3 C's, I think you've covered your bases. Now we're ready to make our garam masala. I'm going to toast my whole spices individually. You don't have to, just toss them around on medium-low heat until they start to release their fragrance, about 30 seconds. Once your whole spices are toasted, add them to a blender, food processor, mortar and pestle, or whatever you use to blend spices. I'm using my coffee grinder because that's just what I have. Mix in whatever ground spices you're using and put that to the side because we're going to start our filling. We're going to start our filling by peeling potatoes. I'm using russets because that's what I have. Use whatever you got, but I recommend russets because they get just fluffy enough without losing their texture when you mash them. Once our potatoes are peeled, we're going to go ahead and quarter them. This will help them cook faster when we boil them. We're going to throw these into a saucepan and cover them with water. Add some salt and put them on high heat. Once the water is boiling, bring the heat down to a simmer and simmer until they're fork tender, about 20 minutes. While the potatoes are boiling, we're going to thaw our peas. Once the potatoes are done boiling, I'll drain them and mash them until they're smooth. Then I'll add my peas and mix those in until they're uniform. To season our filling, we're going to heat up some oil and cumin seeds, ground turmeric, ground coriander, some of our garam masala, and chili powder, as well as ground black pepper. With those spices warmed up, we'll transfer the oil and spices to our potatoes. I'm going to throw in a couple chopped green Thai chilies and minced ginger. If you've been paying attention, we haven't really salted anything at this point, except the water we used to boil the potatoes. So taste for salt and salt the filling to your preference. With our filling ready, we're going to start on our dough. When I made samosas for dance, we used tortillas for wrappers. I always thought this was kind of funny, but it makes sense when you consider that your dough is just flour, water, and some fat, which is exactly what tortillas are made of. If you choose to go that route and use tortillas or a similar flatbread, you can skip ahead to the time on the screen. In a bowl, combine flour, salt, and oil until the dough becomes crumbly. Add your cold water and mix the dough until it comes together in a ball. If the dough's not coming together, add more cold water 1 tablespoon at a time. Transfer your dough ball on a lightly floured surface and knead for 5 to 7 minutes. You can do this in a stand mixer, but I'm using my hands because a lot of people don't have stand mixers. Wrap your dough in plastic and rest it at room temperature for at least 30 minutes and up to 4 hours. Any longer and you should put it in the fridge and let it come to room temperature when you're ready to use it. This picture is from May 21st, 2016. This was my first time having a samosa, and it was made all the better by the addition of cold onion chutney. I spent the last 7.5 years coming back to this picture, reminiscing about this plate. Partly because the food was so good, but partly because I've been trying to figure out what the red condiment was and how to make it. I knew it was red and made with onions. I remember it being spicy. The few people I've asked since then didn't know either. But through the magic of Google, I found out what this was called and how to make it. It goes by a few names: cold onion chutney, cold onion salad, onion relish. Whatever you call it, it's pretty simple to make. Onions, ketchup, and spices. That's it. It's that simple. For almost 8 years, I've been periodically reminiscing and frantically searching for onions, ketchup, and spices. It's funny because I don't even like ketchup. I don't even keep it in my kitchen. So we're going to use tomato paste. If you're using tomato paste, I seriously recommend cooking it, which is not what I did. Cooking it with the spices is going to mellow out the tomato flavor. Next, we're going to make a mint chutney. This one is kind of self-explanatory. Just throw all the ingredients into a blender and blitz until smooth. Lastly is cucumber raita. We're going to wash and grate a cucumber. We're not using the whole cucumber, but I'm going to grate the whole thing anyway for something else. Use paper towel to squeeze all the extra moisture and add the cucumber to a container with yogurt. I'm using the full fat Indian style yogurt I buy at Costco, as well as salt and pepper. You can add things like garlic, coriander and mint leaves, chilies, and various spices. I wanted to keep this pretty neutral because I wanted to use this for something else. And if you're curious about what that is, feel free to subscribe so you can find out. Fill a small bowl with water. If you're using tortillas, make a slurry by adding a couple tablespoons of flour or cornstarch until it reaches the consistency of glue. Divide the dough into equal portions by weight. I ended up making 9 dough balls for a total of 18 samosas. To assemble your samosas, roll a dough ball out to 7 inches, about 17 centimeters. Cut the rolled out dough in half. At this point, I like to use my finger to make a perimeter of water around the semicircle. Put 1 to 3 tablespoons of filling onto the semicircle. Fold the corners towards the center and seal the samosa. If you're using tortillas, do the same thing. Cut the tortillas in half. Spread your slurry around the perimeter of the semicircle. Add your filling and fold the corners towards the center. It takes a few tries, and I recommend being conservative with how much filling you add to the samosa. Once all your samosas are folded, you're ready to fry them. I'm going to fry in a wok, but you can fry in whatever you want, as long as it's deep enough. Remember to use a thermometer to check your oil temp, lay food away from you, and after you add food to the oil, wait for the oil to come back up to temp before adding the next piece. Fry these samosas between 325 and 340 Fahrenheit for 10 to 12 minutes. Once you're done, let them dry on a wire rack. Once the oil is drained, we'll plate our samosas and put our condiments, and that's it. If you're still watching, thanks for getting to the end of the video. I know it's been a long time since the last long video I made, so thanks for coming back as well. And get subscribed if you want to see what I'm going to do with the rest of that cucumber raita. Thanks. Bye.